Malaysia has a newly industrialized market economy, which is relatively open and state-oriented. The economy of Malaysia is the third largest in Southeast Asia, after the much more populous Indonesia and Thailand, and 35th largest in the world. Malaysia is also the third richest in Southeast Asia by GDP per capita values, after the city-states of Singapore and Brunei. Malaysia's economy is one of the most competitive in the world, ranking 14th in 2015. Background: Malaysia experienced an economic boom and underwent rapid development during the late 20th century and has GDP per capita of $11,062.043 in 2014, and is considered a newly industrialized country. In 2009, the PPP GDP was $383.6 billion, about half the 2014 amount, and the PPP per capita GDP was $8,100, about one-third the 2014 amount. In 2014, the Household Income Survey undertaken by the government indicated that there were 7 million households in Malaysia, with an average of 4.3 members in each household. The average household income of Malaysia increased by 18% to $5,900 a month, compared to $5,000 in 2012. As one of three countries that controlled the Strait of Malacca, international trade plays a large role in Malaysia's economy. At one time, it was the largest producer of tin, rubber and palm oil in the world. Manufacturing has a large influence in the country's economy, accounting for over 40% of the GDP. Malaysia is also the world's largest Islamic banking and financial center. In 1991, former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mahathir bin Mohamad outlined his ideal Vision 2020 in which Malaysia would become a self-sufficient industrialized nation by 2020. Tan Sri Nur Muhammad, a government minister, said Malaysia could attain developed country status in 2018 if the country's growth remains constant or increases. According to a report of HSBC, Malaysia will become the world's 21st largest economy by 2050. With a GDP of $1.2 trillion and a GDP per capita of $29,247. The report also says, the electronic equipment, petroleum, and liquefied natural gas producer will see a substantial increase in income per capita. Malaysian life expectancy, relatively high level of schooling, and above-average fertility rate will help in its rapid expansion. Victor Schvetz, the managing director in Credit Suisse, has said, Malaysia has all the right ingredients to become a developed nation. Economic policies. Monetary policy. Prior to the 1997 Asian financial crisis, the Malaysian ringgit was an internationalized currency, which was freely traded around the world. Just before the crisis, the ringgit was traded $2.50 at the dollar. Due to speculative activities, the ringgit fell to as much as $4.10 to the dollar in matter of weeks. Bank Negara Malaysia, the nation's central bank, decided to impose capital controls to prevent the outflow of the ringgit in the open market. The ringgit became non-internationalized and a traveler had to declare to the central bank if taking out more than $10,000 out of the country, and the ringgit itself was pegged at $3.80 to the US dollar. The fixed exchange rate was abandoned in favor of the floating exchange rate in July 2005, hours after China announced the same move. At this point, the ringgit was still not internationalized. The ringgit continued to strengthen to $3.18 to the dollar by March 2008 and appreciated as low as $2.94 to the dollar in May 2011. Meanwhile, many aspects of capital control have been slowly relaxed by Bank Negara Malaysia. However, the government continues to not internationalize the ringgit. The government stated that the ringgit will be internationalized once it is ready. Bank Negara Malaysia for the time being uses interest rate targeting. The overnight policy rate is their policy instrument, and is used to guide the short-term interbank rates, which will hopefully influence inflation and economic growth. Affirmative Action Tun Abdul Razak, who was then the Prime Minister, implemented the affirmative action policy named as New Economic Policy soon after the 13th of May incident in 1969. Prior to the incident, the poverty rates among Malays were extremely high, as was discontent between races, particularly towards the Chinese, who controlled 34% of the economy at the time. Through NEP, the Bumiputera majority are given priority and special privileges in housing developments, scholarship admission, and also for ownership of publicly listed companies. The Malaysian New Economic Policy was created in 1971 with the aim of bringing Malays a 30% share of the economy of Malaysia and eradicating poverty amongst Malays, primarily through encouraging enterprise ownership by Bumiputera. After 40 years of the program, Bumiputera equity ownership rose to 23%, worth $167.7 billion in 2010 against 2.4% in 1970. The NEP is accused of creating an oligarchy and creating subsidy mentality. Political parties such as Parti Keadilan Rakyat and Democratic Action Party have proposed a new policy which will be equal for every Malaysian, regardless of race. When the Democratic Action Party was elected in the state of Penang in 2008, it announced that it will do away with the NEP, claiming that it breeds nepotism, corruption and systemic inefficiency. Wolfgang Kasper, a professor of economics at University of New South Wales, and once an advisor to Malaysia's finance ministry, criticised the NEP, saying that NEP handouts making Malays lazy, corrupt and swell-headed. Worst of all, it keeps them poor. He also criticized the federal government giving cash handouts and financial aid instead of providing equal access to education, to help the marginalized poor to lift their income status. On the 21st of April 2009, the Prime Minister Najib Tun Razak has announced the liberalization of 27 services subsector by abolishing the 30% Bumiputera requirement. The move is seen as the government efforts to increase investment in the service sector of the economy. According to the Premier, many more sectors of the economy will be liberalized. On the 30th of June 2009, the Prime Minister announces further liberation moves including the dismantling of the Bumiputera equity quotas and repealing the guidelines of the Foreign Investment Committee, which was responsible to monitor foreign shareholding in Malaysian companies. However, any Malaysian companies that wishes to list in Malaysia would still need to offer 50% of public shareholding spread to Bumiputera investors. Subsidies and price controls. The Malaysian government subsidizes and controls prices on a lot of essential items to keep the prices low. Prices of items such as palm oil, cooking oil, petrol, flour, bread, rice and other essentials have been kept under market prices to keep cost of living low. As of 2009, 22% of government expenditures were subsidies, with petrol subsidies alone taking up 12%. Since 2010, the government has been gradually reforming Malaysia's subsidy system, via a series of reductions in subsidies for fuel and sugar. As a result, in December 2014, the government officially ended all fuel subsidies, taking advantage of low oil prices at the time, potentially saving the government almost Rm20 billion ringgit annually. The reduction of subsidies are planned over a 3 to 5 year period to strengthen government finances and improve economic efficiency. Sovereign wealth funds. The government owns and operates several sovereign wealth funds that invest in local companies and also foreign companies. One such fund is Khazanah Nasional Berhad, which was established in 1993, and as of the 31st of December 2013 has $41 billion worth of assets. The fund invests in major companies in Malaysia such as CIMB in the banking sector, UEM Group in the construction sector, Telekom Malaysia and Axiata in the communications industry, Malaysia Airports and Malaysia Airlines in the aerospace industry. as well as Tenaga Nasional in the energy sector. Another fund that is owned by the Malaysian government is the Employees Provident Fund, which is a retirement fund that as of the 31st of March 2014, has an asset size of RM597 billion, making it the fourth largest pension fund in Asia and seventh largest in the world. Like Khazanah Nasional, the EPF invests and sometimes owns several major companies in Malaysia such as RHB Bank. EPF investment is diversified over a number of sectors, but almost 40% of their investment are in the services sector. Permodalin Nasional Berhad is another major fund manager controlled by the Malaysian government. It offers capital-guaranteed mutual funds such as Amanah Saham Bumiputera and Amanah Saham Wawasan 2020, which are open only to Malaysian and, in some cases, Bumiputera. Government influence. Although the federal government promotes private enterprise and ownership in the economy, the economic direction of the country is heavily influenced by the government, though 5 years development plans since independence. The economy is also influenced by the government through agencies such as the Economic Planning Unit and government-linked wealth funds such as Khazanah Nasional Berhad, Employees Provident Fund and Permodalin Nasional Berhad. The government's development plans, called the Malaysian Plan, currently the 10th Malaysia Plan, started in 1950 during the British colonial rule. The plans were largely centered around accelerating the growth of the economy by selectively investing in selective sectors of the economy and building infrastructure to support said sectors. For example, in the current national plan, 3 sectors, agriculture, manufacturing and services, will receive special attention to promote the transition to high-value-added activities in the respective areas. Government-linked investment vehicles such as Khazanah Nasional Berhad, Employees Provident Fund and Permodalin Nasional Berhad invest in and sometimes own major companies in major sectors of the Malaysian economy. Currency. The only legal tender in Malaysia is the Malaysian ringgit. As of the 18th of November 2014, the ringgit is traded at 3 Malaysian ringgit and 35 sen at the US dollar. The ringgit has not been internationalized since September 1998, an effect due to the 1997 Asian financial crisis in which the central bank imposed capital controls on the currency, due to speculative short selling of the ringgit. As a part of series of capital controls, the currency was pegged between September 1998 to the 21st of July 2005 at 3 Malaysian ringgit and 80 sen to the dollar after the value of the ringgit dropped from 2 Malaysian ringgit and 50 sen per USD to at 1.4 Malaysian ringgit and 80 sen per USD. In recent years, Bank Negara Malaysia has begun to relax certain rules to the capital controls, although the currency itself is still not traded internationally yet. According to the bank governor, the ringgit will be internationalized when it's ready. On September 2010, in an interview with CNBC, Dato' Seri Najib Tun Razak, who is the Prime Minister of Malaysia and also the Finance Minister, said that the government is open to open up the ringgit to offshore trading if the move will help the economy. He further added that before such a move to be made, it will ensure that rules and regulation will be in place so the currency will not be abused. Business environment. In 2015, Malaysia's economy was one of the most competitive in the world, ranking 14th in the world and 5th for countries with a population of over 20 million, higher than countries like Australia, United Kingdom, South Korea and Japan. According to a June 2013 report by the World Bank, Malaysia ranks 6th in the world in the Ease of Doing Business Index. Malaysia's strengths in the ranking includes getting credit, protecting investors and doing trade across borders. Weaknesses include dealing with construction permits. The study ranks 189 countries in all aspects of doing business. In the investor protection category of the survey, Malaysia had scored a perfect 10 for the extent of disclosure, 9 for director liability and 7 for shareholder suits. Malaysia is behind Singapore, Hong Kong and New Zealand in investor protection category of the survey. In 2015, Malaysia was the sixth most attractive country for foreign investors, ranked in the Baseline Profitability Index published by Foreign Policy magazine. The government is moving towards a more business-friendly environment by setting up a special task force to facilitate business called PEMUDAH, which means simplifier in Malay. Highlights include easing restrictions and requirement to hire expatriates, shorten time to do land transfers and increasing the limit of sugar storage for companies. PEMUDAH has been largely successful at facilitating a more business-friendly environment, as reflected by the 2013 rank of Malaysia in the Ease of Doing Business Index. Agriculture sector. Agriculture is now a minor sector of the Malaysian economy, accounting for 7.1% of Malaysia's GDP in 2014 and employing 11.1% of Malaysia's labour force, contrasting with the 1960s when agriculture accounted for 37% of Malaysia's GDP and employed 66.2% of the labour force. The crops grown by the agricultural sector has also significantly shifted from food crops like paddy and coconut to industrial crops like palm oil and rubber, which in 2005 contributed to 83.7% of total agricultural land use, compared to 68.5% in 1960. Despite its minor contribution to Malaysia's GDP, Malaysia has a significant foothold in the world's agricultural sector, being the world's second-largest producer of palm oil in 2012, producing 18.79 million tons of crude palm oil on roughly 5 million hectares of land, though Indonesia produces more palm oil. Malaysia is the world's largest exporter of palm oil, having exported 18 million tons of palm oil products in 2011. Industry sector. Malaysia's industrial sector accounts for 36.8%, over a third of the country's GDP in 2014, and employs 36% of the labour force in 2012. The industrial sector mostly contributed by the electronics industry, automotive industry and construction industry. Electrical and electronics. The electrical and electronics industry is the leading sector in Malaysia's manufacturing sector, contributing significantly to the country's exports and employment in 2013. Malaysia benefits from the global demand in the usage of mobile devices, storage devices, optoelectronics and embedded technology. Electronic components products. Activities which fall under this subsector include semiconductor devices, passive components, printed circuits and other components such as media, substrates and connectors. Within the electronic components subsector, the semiconductor devices is the leading contributor of exports for the E&E industry. Exports of semiconductor devices were 111.19 billion or 47% of the total E&E products exported in 2013. Malaysia is a major hub for electrical component manufacturing, with factories of international companies like Intel, AMD, Freescale Semiconductor, ASE, Infineon, ST Microelectronics, Texas Instruments, Fairchild Semiconductor, Renesas, Xfab and major Malaysian-owned companies such as Green Packet, Silterra, Globetronics, Unisem and Anari, which have contributed to the steady growth of the semiconductor industry in Malaysia. To date, there are more than 50 companies, largely MNCs, producing semiconductors devices in Malaysia. Photovoltaics. In 2014, Malaysia was the world's third largest manufacturer of photovoltaics equipment, behind China and the European Union. In 2013, Malaysia's total production capacity for solar wafers, solar cells and solar panels totaled 4,042 megawatts. Malaysia is a major hub for solar equipment manufacturing, with factories of companies like First Solar, Panasonic, TS Solartech, Jinko Solar, Ya Solar, Sun Power, Hanwha Q Cells, and Sun Edison in locations like Kulim, Penang, Malacca, Cyberjaya and Ipoh. Many international companies have the majority of production capacity located in Malaysia, such as the American company First Solar, which has over 2,000 megawatts of production capacity located in Kulim and only 280 megawatts located in Ohio, and formerly German-based Hanwha Q Cells, which produces 1,100 megawatts worth of solar cells in Cyberjaya while producing only 200 megawatts worth of solar cells in Germany. Sun Power's largest manufacturing facility with a capacity of 1,400 megawatts is also located in Malacca. Automotive. In 2014, Malaysia's automotive industry produced 545,122 passenger cars and 51,296 commercial vehicles for a total of 596,418 vehicles, making Malaysia the 22nd largest automotive manufacturer in the world. The automotive sector is dominated by Attribution, who other than assembles cars for Tata Daewoo, Honda, Isuzu, Suzuki, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen. Jack and Bibin also owns Malaysia's indigenous automobile company, Proton. Other companies with a significant foothold in the automotive industry include Perodua, Malaysia's second indigenous car company, and NASA, who is the franchise holder for Ferrari, Maserati, Koenigsegg, Kia Motors, Peugeot, Chevrolet, Citroën, Brabus, Ducati, Harley-Davidson, Piaggio, Vespa, Aprilia, Gilera, and Indian motorcycle brands in Malaysia. Construction. Malaysia has a large construction industry of over 102.2. The highest percentage share was contributed by construction of non-residential buildings, which recorded 34.6%. This was followed by civil engineering subsector, residential buildings, and special trades. Selangor recorded the highest value of construction work done at 24.5% among the states, followed by Johor at 16.5%, Kuala Lumpur at 15.8%, Sarawak at 8.6% and Penang at 6.4%. The contribution of these 5 states accounted for 71.8% of the total value of construction work in Malaysia. The expansion of the construction industry has been catalyzed by major capital expenditure projects, and a key factor has been the government's economic transformation program and public-private partnership mega-projects like Tun Razak Exchange, KVMRT and Iskandar Malaysia. Defense. Malaysia has a relatively new defense industry that was created after the government created the Malaysia Defense Industry Council to encourage local companies to participate in the country's defense sector in 1999. The land sector of the defense industry is dominated by Deftech, a subsidiary of Malaysia's largest automotive manufacturer, Drbhicom. The company focuses on manufacturing armored vehicles and specialized logistics vehicles. The company has supplied ACV-15 infantry fighting vehicles to the Malaysian Army in the past and is currently supplying the Deftech AV-8 amphibious, multi-role armored vehicle to the Malaysian Army. The sea sector of the defense industry is dominated by Bausted Heavy Industries, who builds warships for the Royal Malaysian Navy through transfer of technology with foreign companies. The company has built 4 Kedah-class offshore patrol vessels for the RMN in the past and is currently undertaking a project to build 6 more second-generation patrol vessels for the RMN.